All right, as Jennifer said, I want to just go ahead and reintroduce my beautiful family. That is Cortland. We've been married since 2014. We met and got married in Nashville, Tennessee. That little buddy that he's holding, who looks either like me or Prince Charming, I'll let you decide. His name is Theodore Rex, so we call him Teddy the T-Rex. Be careful what you name your children. And I am holding my beautiful son, CJ. We did not know when we named him Cortland Jr. that he was actually going to look just like my husband, so that was a tiny miracle. It was amazing. Fun fact, my boys are Irish twins. We had Teddy February of 2020, and 3 months later, learned that breastfeeding is not birth control, and got pregnant with CJ. They are the same age for 10 days, which is so wild and so fun. All right, I just want to say a few things, a few housekeeping items before I get into my speech. The first is, I acknowledge I would not be here if it was not for several women in this room, including this beautiful table and many others. Truly, both in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual and emotional sense. So if you have been part of my family's journey, whether it was intimately or just praying for us over the last several months, thank you. It means the world. And finally, no one asked me to do this, but I just have to do it. The end of the year for MOPS is coming. And if you are sitting here and you're like, I don't know if I'm gonna renew next year, I'm not sure. Let me tell you, there is somebody in this room that needs you and wants to be your friend. Heck, I'll be your friend. This community is amazing. And so if you're on the fence, I encourage you to really think about it and do it again, because there's so much blessing in this room. All right, let's get started. So I have this question that I think about all the time, and I finally went to what I would like to think of as a reliable, trustworthy source. Maybe many of you have gone to this source as well. It starts with a B. BuzzFeed. I went to BuzzFeed, and guess what? They also were asking the same question that I had. And the question is this: if you could have one last meal on earth, what would it be? Well, BuzzFeed had 40 answers to that question. I'm just gonna go over my favorite 4 of those because they're hilarious. And as I share, you can read the slide, it's a long slide. I'll just provide my colorful commentary on that. This one, woo, huge idea. And if you're reading it, you would know why, because he eats it like at 3 a.m. Y'all, if I could stay up past 9 p.m., I'm pretty sure I would enjoy IHOP too if I did the activities that you do in the middle of the night, right? And then you learn that he wants to propose to his girlfriend in a pancake, and that sounds like a great 2 a.m. idea after you do the activities that you do at 2 a.m. That's a pretty great one. All right, next is, I love this one. It's the entire Cheesecake Factory menu. All right, as somebody whose favorite restaurant was the Cheesecake Factory circa 2007, I know that menu is huge, so I'm so glad that this girl qualifies it with just a bite, right? Because it probably would be her last meal on earth. All right, this one is really sweet. I love this one, and probably many of you would share this as well. It's mom and dad's favorite dish. That's really amazing. And who wouldn't want a barbecued steak? That sounds so nice. And then this last one, I think it's me. If you know, you know. I would say I love it because we can't get it here in the South, but as somebody who also has lived in Los Angeles, I still love it. I mean, come on, a double-double protein style, which is where you do the lettuce. Yeah, we know. Y'all, you can do Neapolitan shakes. It's so delicious. Okay, these are fun. These type of questions are fun because it's hypothetical, right? We don't actually think we are going to have one last night on earth. We know what's going to happen eventually, but it doesn't faze us. We're not thinking that way. But I know that there are some women in this room who spent one last meal with a loved one. And I'm one of those. A little less than a year ago, a nurse and a doctor sat on the couch in my living room and said, Kasey, Court, tonight is the night. It's time to remove your son off of his life supports. How do you want to spend your last minutes, hours? So you break bread, you share a meal. Even though my son was just 100 days old, you still come together and you break bread. I'm no stranger to hard. I know suffering pretty intimately. I also know that there are women in this room that have gone through some pretty difficult things. And I know that there are women in this room that will go through some difficult things. And I'm not saying that as a harbinger of negativity. I'm actually getting my cue from Jesus, who in John 16 says, you will have trouble in this world, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. My friends, I hope in these next 25 minutes that we can take heart together. Now, I'm going to share some of the lessons that I learned in my hardship. I'm not going to go into all the details of the trauma and suffering because, y'all, that is saved for a team of professionals. This is not that. But I do want to give some higher-arching points of the story. And we're going to start with what to do when you enter into a hardship. Next, we'll move when you're in the middle of a hardship. What's some things that you can do, or if you're the friend or the loved one looking in, how you can help. And finally, we're gonna bring some Jesus into it. All right, y'all ready? Let's take heart. Okay, so like many of you, my family has a bunch of fun stories that we like to share. And a lot of the stories that we share come from my grandmother, who grew up in a small Pacific island called Guam. And some of the stories are hilarious, like that she used to dance for sailors, and which means you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to know everything, and then your grandma starts talking, you go, oh my goodness, you're my grandmother, I'm not going to know anything. But the story that I want to share with you today is of her father, my great-grandfather Howard, who was this incredible naval engineer. And he apparently spent all this time restoring the ship, years and years and years working on this boat, and the time came to put the engine in. It took a crew of people. The ship was already in the ocean. Something happened. Snap. It sank down into the ocean. Years and years and years worth of work lost in a moment. Now, being the great naval engineer that he was, you'd think that he'd be cursing like a sailor. But no, he did not. He simply said, instant acceptance of total reality. And I want to just take a moment, if you will bear with me. I want to go through each of these words because I think they each hold weight. And then combined, it becomes this powerful force for us to be able to use. So let's take a moment. First is instant. All right, instant. It's the now, it's present, right? The reason why this is important is because I firmly believe that it is only in the present that we get to experience the presence of God. When our minds are in the future and looking forward, or when we're stuck in the past, something does not allow the fullness of God to embody us, but when we are able to open our hearts, open our eyes, open our hands in that moment, His fullness comes upon us. The present truly allows us to experience His presence. Next is acceptance. Ooh, this is a good one. And I hope maybe one day I'll be able to do a full talk on it. But for now, I'll just leave you with this one thought. And that is, there's a reason why in 12-step programs, the serenity prayer is used. And that first line of the serenity prayer is so powerful. It's, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Or I'm going to say that again because I need that today, and maybe there's some other people that need it because it is so good. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Don't you feel like if we prayed that every morning, we'd have world peace or something? Like, it's so good, but it's so hard to let go of the things we can't control, right? And that's what I think acceptance does, is being able to be at peace with the things that we cannot change. Instant acceptance of total. It's the whole. It's not compartmentalized. It's not, all right, I can deal with this over here, but this part right here isn't working for me. I'm just gonna be in denial about it. I won't think about it. We have to be able to accept the whole picture, which is hard to do. And finally, reality. I thought about giving an example, but y'all, I think that each of us can go to our own special reality every now and then. I constantly am like, okay, Earth to Spacey Kasey, come back down. Like, focus on what's in front of you. I think we all know what it's like to live in an alternate reality at some point. Okay, this is a big phrase. Let me tell you how it recently played out in my life. It's November of 2020. You're like, oh my gosh, Kasey, November 2020, something bad is gonna happen, and you're right, yes, something bad is gonna happen because it's 2020. November 2020, my family has just moved to Atlanta, Georgia, 10 days prior. I am 20 weeks pregnant with my son, CJ, and I am sitting at Emory Midtown Hospital by myself in a dark ultrasound room. I've been at the hospital since 9:30 that morning. It is now 4:30 p.m. And I remember thinking, like, okay, I've had 2 scans that both were 2 hours. I've seen 5 doctors. Somebody has to tell me what's going on because it's 4:30 and they're gonna go home at 5 p.m., right? Like, this is the time. And as I was sitting there, I was by myself because November 2020, I just had this conversation with God, and I just said, oh, whatever happens, I trust you. I trust you. I don't know what is going to be shared, but I'm with you. A few minutes later, in walks this vision of a doctor, and she says some things that I will never forget. She says, "Hi, I'm Dr. Vidal. I am seriously concerned about your son's heart." Instant acceptance of total reality. She goes on to say that my son is growing in with almost half of a heart, and it's a really big deal. Instant acceptance of total reality. Because I had already had that conversation with God, because I accepted what she told me, this is what this did for me. You guys, I didn't pit myself against God. I didn't say, why God? I wasn't saying, why me? I wasn't saying, this isn't fair. Because why God? Why not God? You sent your own son to die on a cross. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair. Why me? Why not me? I needed God so intimately to be able to walk what I was about to walk. I did not need myself at war with him by asking some of those questions, by not believing what was told. Instant acceptance of total reality gave me the confidence and the faith to walk boldly the path that God had laid before my family. And we did. We did. Well, the baby kept growing, and after several months, it was almost time for the baby to come, and at that point, really announced on any social media that A, we were in Atlanta, B, we were pregnant again because we had a 10-month-old, and C, that this baby growing in me was had a critical congenital heart defect. So, well, I posted a crazy post announcing all that information, and something wild happened, you guys. People started coming out of the woodworks, just coming out of the woodworks, and it was interesting. Like a sorority sister would come and message me and say, "Oh my gosh, Kasey, I'm so sorry I read your post, but guess what? My great aunt has a brother who has a cousin who has a son that has that same thing. Do you want to talk to them?" And you're like, "No, I don't, but thank you." Okay. Or, a high school friend or middle school friend saying, "Okay, my child didn't have that heart defect, but another one, we're fine. They're 22, or not 22, but we're 2 years old. Like, it's great." And you're like, "Okay, that's good for you." Or then another friend say, "Hey, Kasey, I know it's been several years since I've reached out or we've talked. I had a daughter that had the same thing. If you ever want to talk." And you're like, You had? Oh my gosh. But here's what all of that did. It just became noise. It became all these people that felt like they could relate to what I was going through, but nobody was sitting in these long prenatal conferences with provider after provider telling us about the intricacies of my son's heart. And so it felt like competition. It felt like, "You're gonna be okay. We're trying to relate," but it wasn't relating. It was comparing. Okay, we're gonna talk about Brene Brown has, you guys. It wouldn't be a speech without Brene Brown, right? Like we all have girl crushes on Brene Brown. So this is an amazing quote by Brene Brown talking about empathy and just how incredible it is when we can just listen and hold space for those that are going through something hard. And here's the thing, it's challenging to do because we want to try to relate. But sometimes things are so difficult that it's just good to give them space. And I am here to tell you, I am the recipient of this kind of love, of this kind of empathy, and it has made a world of a difference. I'm not great at this. I want to be better. I'm inspired by so many of you in the room to be able to hold space without judgment. But I did have one time that I was really good at it, so that's the time that I'm going to share with you guys today, where I was able to have really good empathy. So this is about 6 weeks after CJ was born. 3 days after my son was born, he had this really crazy open heart reconstructive surgery. We did not know that he had other multiple failing organs, and so he really never quite recovered from that surgery. So we're week 6 in the hospital. A girlfriend calls and is like, "Kasey, how's it going with CJ today?" I'm like, don't want to talk about it. "How are you?" And she says, "Oh, Kasey, I had the worst night. I was up all night with my daughter throwing up. It was so hard. She's exhausted. I'm exhausted. She's still throwing up. I am so tired." Well, at that point, I had never stayed up all night with Teddy throwing up. I didn't know what that was like. I just said, "Oh my gosh, friend, that sounds really hard. I'm so sorry." A few hours later, a family member calls, says, how's CJ? And I was honest. I said, "Listen, the boy is on his 3rd blood transfusion in just 36 hours. We can't figure out why he's not getting the oxygen that he needs. I don't know. But I do know this. I do know that I just got off the phone with a girlfriend who told me about how hard of a night she had because she was up all night throwing up, and I just think hard is hard. I just think she had a hard night, I'm having a hard time with CJ. There's just, everything is hard, and it doesn't matter the level of difficulty, it doesn't even compare, so I'm not gonna compare. Hard is hard. To which this family member replied, bless his heart, Kasey, that does sound really hard. But you know what's even harder? Are these migrants, these refugees coming out of Greece and the mothers. That seems impossible. And I stopped him. I'm like, did you not listen to what I said? Like, I can almost guarantee that if one of these refugee mothers sat in my hospital room, she would look at me and say, this is so hard, Kasey. And then I'm sure if I sat in her place, I would say, this is so hard. And then if we were sitting in my friend's place with her daughter throwing up all night, we'd say, this is so hard. Y'all, hard is hard. It's as simple as that. And here's the thing, if we stop comparing, if we stop trying to relate and trying to, I don't think we mean to one-up each other in our difficulties, but it can come across like that sometimes. And we just hold space. I really do think, I don't know, change the world, or at least change our family's world, or change our friends' world. There's power in it. There's power in it. All right. So my hardship with CJ, it kept going, and my husband Court and I made a decision that I hope nobody in this room ever has to make. We had to make a decision because his suffering was so great that the arms of Jesus offered the peace that no hospitals provided to bring. And we brought my son home on pediatric hospice care. Well, a few days into that, we took family photos, which was that very beautiful photo that you saw. And that photographer, she's so talented, and probably some of you in this room have worked with her. Her name is Joy Canis, but Joy was sitting also on my living room couch and said, how are you doing this? How are you holding your dying baby? To which I simply responded the only way that I know how, and I just said, love leans in. And this is where we get to the Easter message. We're finally here. I thought I might talk about Jesus and his suffering, but no, we are a group of mothers, so I want to share what the best example of motherhood we have in scriptures, and that is Mother Mary, who was at the foot of the cross watching her own son suffer and die. And this woman, she wasn't kneeled over, she wasn't on the floor, she stood, is what scriptures tell us in John. She stood at the cross. How do you have the power to do that? It's because love leans in. She was at the foot of the cross, she was with Emmanuel. She was with love, and I'm here to tell you the good news is that you too have this beautiful, amazing, powerful love inside of you, and I'm getting that from 1 John 4 that says, if you love, God is with you. He remains in you. He lives in you. And you have this powerful ability to love. And this is what I know about love. Our patience can wane, we can become exhausted, but love never ends. It is renewable. It is this source, this life-giving source that is in us because God is in us and God is the source of love. He is love. And I don't know what your heart is. It might just be wrestling your toddler to get into the car, but you have the ability to love greatly if you so choose it. I didn't know when I gave her that answer that it was going to be just a few hours later that nurse and that doctor would sit on the same living room couch and say, it's time. So what do you do if you have a few hours left with your child? What do you do? My family did this. We created a masterpiece with our feet. And it's a symbol documenting that we were all present. And let me tell you, his presence was palpable. We were present in that moment. I put away everything, and I just leaned into the love of my son. And I'm able to smile right there because of love. And you're able to do it too. I believe it. Okay. Woo. I don't know. I feel like I could drink a In-N-Out milkshake right now. Like emotionally exhausting. Maybe just the whole Cheesecake Factory menu. Talk about it in therapy later. No, you guys. Thank you for listening today. We talked about 3 things. We talked about instant acceptance of total reality, what to do when you enter into a hardship. We talked about hard is hard, not comparing each other's hardships and having empathy for one another. And finally, we talked about Mary's example of leaning in to love. And the good news is, as we lean in, love is constantly leaning into you. Thanks for taking heart today. Let's pray. Rock of Ages, we thank you for your son. We thank you for the examples of love that you have given us in your word, but also through the people that we see around us. Thank you that you are in all things, and because of you, all things hold together. Thank you for the mothers in this room that love with their whole hearts. And I just ask that they will tap into that wellspring of life and love that is inside of them. For the women that are going through something hard right now, draw near to them. Your promise is that you are near to the brokenhearted, and I just ask that we feel your presence today. Help us to remember the reason why we celebrate Good Friday and Easter this weekend. And all the hoopla and all the fun have its time, but we remember you as well. We ask all this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.